24/7 roadside assistance, exclusive discounts, and much more. AAA, we're always with you. Save $10 on a new membership and add a second member for free. Call 844-676-0567 or visit any nearby office by December 31st.
7:46 at Indiana Morning. Time for our Monday morning conversation with Marshall Chriswell. We remind you that this radio program is intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Now, each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of these differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. Marshall, it's the end of the year. Lots of folks like to use this time to review different aspects of your life, and I guess one of those things that is worthwhile reviewing and updating is your will, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Good morning. It is a good time of year to think about those things. It's a time for reflection, but also a time to make sure that the house is in order. And one of the most important things in any household is the existence of a good estate plan that has been carefully thought out and kept current. So, that's a great topic of conversation. I actually had a client in this week. It was a new client, and she had come in, and we were talking about her estate plan, and she brought some documents in that her and her husband had drawn up probably 25 years ago. And we sat down and looked at them, and it became very clear that this was it was not what they intended. At the time it was, but moving forward, this was not something that they wanted to have in place. We were looking at wills and powers of attorney, and there were some gifts in the wills that just didn't make sense anymore. There were people in the powers of attorney that didn't make sense anymore. And so I said, all right, well, we need to get these things changed. And she said, okay, well, can we do that? My husband's been diagnosed with dementia. She said, and I said, and, we went through a series of questions, and, I came to the determination that, we weren't going to be able to update her husband's documents. So that's a situation, very terrible situation for their family. And also, they hadn't looked at these documents for many, many years, or they would have taken action sooner. So it's just a little anecdote that I wanted to share with the listeners. There are many things that can affect, whether these estate planning documents, wills, powers of attorney, trusts, guardianship agreements, all these things. There are many situations that can arise that mean that you want to change those things, and and if you wait too long, then you can't do it. So it's definitely a good thing to think about this time of year.
Yeah, when people first get together, they get married, and after 15, 20, 30 years, they figure, well, our will should be okay because we did it 25 years ago, but now we have kids, and now they have kids,
right?
And things change.
Sure, right? Sure. And when it may have been appropriate back then to have your parents, listed as your executors or your trustees or powers of attorney, your parents have gotten older, obviously, and in some cases no longer with us. So that changes things. And then also, like in this situation that I was talking about, there were gifts in the will, cash gifts to family members, and as you get older and you retire and you start to diminish some of those cash assets, you have less liquidity. If you're going, if you're drawing down from your retirement accounts and your savings to live on during retirement, which we all do, and then those assets then weren't available to make those gifts anymore. So it definitely can cause an issue.
And your assets change. When you first started out, you were renting an apartment. Now you have a 4-bedroom house and 15 acres of land, and you weren't even thinking about that 20 years ago, right?
That's right. And Yeah, and you had kids that maybe were minors at the time, and like you said, now they're grown, and now they're grandkids, and it just and they're married, and it just changes the equation and the thinking. So, what I always do is, for anybody that I prepare an estate plan for, every year I send out just a little reminder, a letter saying, okay, have any of these things happened? Have you had changes in your family dynamics? Have there been marriages or divorces or births or deaths? Have you started a business? Have you had a significant change in your net worth? Have you had changes in relationships with the people that you have appointed as executors or trustees or powers of attorney? All of those things are going to affect the plan. And then even absent any of those changes, at least once every 3 years, let's have a phone conversation. Call me. Let's talk for 5 minutes. I'm not going to charge you for it. Let's just see if there's any reason for you to come in and have a consultation about making amendments.
Attorney Marshall Chriswell, our guest here on Indiana in the Morning, WCCS AM 1160, FM 101.1. We had a question come up here in the office the other day. Somebody was telling us about an acquaintance of theirs who left all their belongings and assets to their cat. How does that happen? And what happens? Where does that go to?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've dealt with this situation. What we would do, I've met with folks that don't have children or grandchildren or other family members that they want to leave their estate to, or part of their estate they'd like to leave for the care and maintenance of their pets. Mm-hmm. So what we normally do then is we put in place a pet trust, and this trust appoints, a human, a trusted human, as the trustee, to manage these assets, and then use those for the care and maintenance of the pet during their life, and then usually there's a residuary or a remainder interest in that trust that, if the pet passes away and there are still funds in the trust, then in a lot of cases, pet owners want those, these concerned pet owners want those funds to go to a charity like, say, Four Footed Friends or the Humane Society or something like that.
Okay, so those assets will be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm sure every year things change. New laws, new regulations. This would be another good time for folks to check with you and see what changes there are as they get ready for the end of the year. Of course, income tax is coming up around the corner.
Yeah, I think, like I said, end of year is a good time to make sure the house is in order. And things that people think about are real estate. Okay, who is on the title to your real estate? If it's your marital home, sometimes this house is one that one of the spouses owned prior to marriage, and it's still in that spouse's name solely. So in most situations, most of the time, it's a good idea to have the marital home in joint names. It's good for protection from creditors. It's good for estate planning and inheritance tax purposes if and when one of you passes away. So those kinds of things. Looking at business interests and making sure that if you have a corporation or an LLC or a partnership, that those records are updated. A lot of people don't. With small businesses, they fail to keep adequate records. Minutes for annual meetings. And such. So it's a good idea to take a look at those. And if you're not sure if you've got everything in order, set up a consultation with an attorney and go through it.
Of course, when somebody passes away, if you are the executor, there are so many things and forms and different papers that need to be filled out that the average person has no idea this needs to be done. You can direct them right through that entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I've dealt with a lot. Folks come in and say, well, my husband or wife or mother or father just passed away, and I've started the process, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Right. And it's just natural. It's a very complicated process if you don't do it on a daily basis, if you're not trained in it. And so that's definitely something that if you are struggling with that, or you've just lost a loved one, and you just want to have a conversation about, hey, where do I go from here? Do I need the services of an attorney? Because in some cases you may not. There are situations where spouses, where one spouse passes away and everything is a non-probate asset. Everything's in joint names, and there's no inheritance tax due or anything like that. So maybe nothing needs to be done, but it's better to know. You want to know what the steps are.
And you still have to do income tax forms for the deceased as well.
That's true. That's true. If they had income sufficient that they had to file a tax return in that last year of their life, income tax returns are going to have to be filed. And possibly inheritance tax returns as well then.
Marshall, let's remind our listeners your location and the phone number where you can be reached.
I'm in the Atrium building right here in downtown Indiana. My phone number is 724-465-5826, and the website is www.westernpalawyer.com.
All right, Marshall Chriswell with us this morning. Marshall Law, have a great week, and if I don't see you again, a great Christmas holiday season.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Indiana in the Morning continues on WCCS AM 1160, FM 101.1. Coming up next hour, we'll be talking with representatives from the It's a Wonderful Life Festival. Lots taking place in downtown Indiana for the holiday season. And then coming up at 9:45, we'll hear from Mark Burdick and Jody Rainey. He's the principal at Homer Center High School. They are getting ready for the biggest football game in the history of Indiana County High School football. That's all coming up, plus lots more of your holiday favorites. News just a couple of minutes away. Josh will be along with our Indiana County Report. Jack will take a look at sports headlines as we continue with Indiana in the Morning.
Time. It's never a good time when your car dies. Need a car today? Get a car today at Terrell's Auto.